Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming and attending this talk on a Saturday afternoon. We're very excited to introduce Edgar Virguez. Edgar Virguez is an energy systems engineer promoting the transition towards a decarbonized electric power system. Understanding the collective effort required to achieve a rapid and cost-efficient energy transition, he pursues a multidisciplinary inquiry-based method to formulate energy-related research questions. Integrating methods from operations research, geospatial analysis, and environmental economics, Edgar's research contributes to answering critical questions that enables pathways towards sustainable power systems. So yeah, thank you, and please join me in welcoming Edgar Virguez.
So good afternoon, everybody. As Maya kindly introduced me, I'm Edgar Virguez. I'm really happy to be here, and this is Hannah. Say hi. So I'm really excited to be here, and today I'm going to share a short reflection about my work at Duke. And today's talk is called "Who Pays the Price for Our Actions? The Toll of Environmental Problems for Members of the Developing." So the idea of the talk is that I'm going to share a little bit of my experience working here at Duke with a called Voices in the Environment. So I'll navigate through one of the things that have made this experience a unique one and that have contributed to being able to share the effect of environmental problems for developing countries. So I'll start just by introducing myself. As Maya said, who am I? Maya said what I do for a living, but mainly I am a husband. This is my wonderful wife, Tevis Korat, who is also a Duke University Master of Environmental Management alumni. This is my dog, Brownie, who is an old English sheepdog, and who's actually 4 years old today. It's his birthday. And this is Hannah when she was little. Look, that's a baby. And the most important facet of my life, I'm a family member. That's what I do. A baby, Hannah, yes. What do I do for a living? What are my research interests? So in short, it's understanding how do we actually transition as a society from a deeply that we have focused on fossil fuel generation methods, just to quickly transition to a deeply decarbonized electric power system. In short, is how do we actually supply all of our needs as a society without discharging carbon dioxide to the atmosphere? And I do this by combining energy system modeling, operation research, and GIS. So, what I'm going to share today, let me start by saying that many of you have or could have seen in the news about the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is all about my research. How do we actually transform the way we actually generate electricity and we supply all of our energy services as a society? But this has not only a local impact, but an international impact. And we have to make sure that, for example, those efforts that we have here in North Carolina, for example, Duke Energy, who is our electricity supplier, are actually impacting the globe. And this is a picture of my native country, Colombia, a president announcing that they are also trying to decarbonize. So the idea is that I'm trying to understand how do we actually as a society transform into that type of systems in which we actually supply everything without carbon. But let me start sharing a little story. The idea is that we answer not only how, what, and why are we going to do it, but deploying different amount of renewables and how are we going to do it is the focus of my PhD dissertation. But let me start with a short idea, with a short question that actually resonates with why did I get here and how this connects to the topic of my presentation today. Recently, Hannah has been speaking a lot, so she has learned how to say, who's your best friend? Who's your best friend? Best friend is mommy and daddy, but recently, so I love when she says mommy and daddy, but recently when I asked her who was his best friend, her answer was this character, Elmo. So when he said Elmo, I was disappointed. I was waiting that I was his best friend, and she told me who is your best friend from Sesame Street? And I had to make a quick answer because I was not going to say that Hannah was my best friend, so that she learned also that I can also have Sesame Street friends. So I answered can count. And when I would try, my wife told me, why do you say can count? I remember that I choose this field because I love mathematics, I love counting, and I love a lot of things that you can actually count with numbers. So I was really connected with this character. And that reminded me of how I started in the field. And this actually resonates with the topic of today's talk. So what I choose environmental sciences, this is a picture of me in 2007, 2008, working in Colombia as an environmental engineer because I feel passionate about connecting in chemistry, in mathematics, physics, to try to solve environmental problems. But what I really discovered working in this project that was diagnosing Bogotá, who's the capital, that's the capital of Colombia, is that behind everything that we do technically, all the numbers that we put, you're gonna find pictures like this. This is a real picture that we took 14 years ago, and that was the day where I actually discovered that I wanted to devote my life to solve environmental problems. This is a picture of what we call in Spanish ERA. It's enfermedad respiratoria aguda, which in English translates to acute respiratory sickness. And this is a picture that we took in one of the hospitals, special rooms that we visit, of a young mother in Colombia with his baby that was having really dangerous problems with her lungs. And for you just to learn, during the last year that was reported in 2009, for every 1,000 newborn babies that were born in Bogota, 9.2 babies died in the following months or between the first 2 years. And the second reason for them to die, it was because they actually were exposed to air quality problems. So when I saw that the work I was doing could make a difference into expanding the life of these kids, it makes sense. So it makes sense that I wasn't playing with computer models, I wasn't playing with numbers. I was behind that helping people and helping people who I was trying to change their life. So after we had this visit, after we took this picture, of course we cried. It was really hard just to speak with them and say like, I didn't do anything, and why is my baby suffering, and why is that I have to pay the price for things that I didn't do. I didn't know that air quality in Bogota was as bad. I don't have the money to live in other places. So that actually connected me to what I am and I do for living. So that reminded me that behind everything that we do in environmental sciences, there is a story, there is names, there are people who will be affected and who will be dying. So going a little bit forward to my experience, I decided that I wanted to actually continue working numbers, continue working in different subjects, but making sure that I always remember what brought me here and try to connect those who actually I could impact with the stories behind it. So I decided, when I started here at Duke, I decided to create a course called Voices in the Environment. I didn't decide to create it, the course was created, but I decided to design it. So 4 years ago, the course, I was given the possibility of leading the course. And in the course, the idea is that we try to approach Spanish-speaking proficiency. So the course is taught in Spanish. So we try to develop a course that was doing 2 things at the same time. First, we try to develop the language proficiency of the participants. But second, we try to connect them with the characters who are behind each of the environmental challenges that we study. What do we study? We study different environmental challenges across Latin America. So let me give you one example. When you enter the classroom, one of the first things that I play with my students is called Who Wants to Be a Latin American Genius? This is who wants to be a Latin American genius? And when you try to play Who Wants to Be Latin American Genius, I ask you questions about Latin America. What do you know about Latin America? About the Amazon jungle? About the Galapagos Island? But one of the main questions that brought a kind of loss to the classroom is when I asked them about paramos. When I asked them about what's a paramo, and I asked, it's a member of Paraguay, someone who was born in Paraguay. It's a unique ecosystem. It's an endemic species in Latin America, and it's a plant in Latin America. 95% of the students don't know that a paramo is a unique ecosystem. So let me introduce you to paramos. It's a paramo. It's a unique ecosystem that it's located mainly in Colombia. Colombia is located in Latin America, and it has a high importance for the society, and I'll describe why. And it's also have a big connection with climate change, and it actually shows why actually we are trying to understand and what we are trying to solve the climate change crisis, and why is the impact of not solving that it's going to be so hard on members of the developing country. So as you can see, this is located in top higher mountains in Colombia. So this is a map that shows where paramos are located across the world. So there are two characteristics for paramos. Right here, you see along all these red points where the paramos are located, they have to be around the equatorial line. So the equatorial line is actually that line in which we actually are, it's located between the tropics. So you have paramos in each of these different countries and in high altitude. So you have a paramo located in high mountains, and as it is shown here, you have a specific characteristic for the paramos. But again, I won't discuss a lot about the paramos, but I will just say that the paramos have two main characteristics. They are really rich in animals and plants. So what you see here, it's a characteristic of the paramos is that they have a lot of water retention. What we have water retention is that they are able to store water for a long time, for decades, because they have a special characteristic. That's for right. And then you also have what we call, there is a lot of native species. And this is just a picture of the native species. And you have what we call endemic species that actually only live in Panama. Why is that connected to the affectation to members of the developing country? Because as we have explored with climate change, as we are being exposed to having increases in the average temperature in the world in 1 or 2 centigrades, the paramo ecosystems are being destroyed. So now, normally in Colombia, we would classify 29 paramo ecosystems who have been existing for decades. And the last year, unfortunately, at least 4 of them have disappeared. So we are not saying that 20%, around 20%, 15% of the paramo have disappeared because of climate change. That's it's a reason. So going back to the topic, what's the connection of how does this affect members of the developing country? It's simple. And many of the actions that we have taken as a society about either even if we are going to decarbonize or not, are related to making sure that ecosystems like this won't suffer extremely. But we don't connect that to how are the lives of those who are surrounding these ecosystems are going to change. So it has been calculated that if we actually allow the global average temperature to increase 1 or 2 centigrades, all the different services that this ecosystem would provide would disappear in the next 1 or 2 decades. Why is this important? Because, for example, Panama supply 90% of the water for the big local cities in Colombia. Paramos also supply a lot of really rich, nutrient-rich soil. Paramos supply a lot of different ecosystemic services for people who have lived there for decades. So what we don't realize is that many of the things that would happen if the paramos disappear would directly affect the communities of developing countries. So for example, if the Paris Agreement goals are not reached, we would say that most of the cities in Colombia would actually have to change the way they are actually getting water. That would bring a lot of problems for members of a low socioeconomic strata who actually can't pay for additional private services of water. It will displace a lot of the people who live around these ecosystems, and it will forever disrupt their lives. So this is one of the topics that we just discussed. There are other discussions that we can actually show this is, for example, a discussion about asbestos. Asbestos, it's a fiber that was highly popular between the 60s and the 80s throughout the world because it contains a lot of physical chemical properties that make it suitable for development and for making sure that in the different houses that you have, it was a really good isolator of temperature and keep the temperature inside the rooms pretty good. But what's important, what we discuss in the course is, as you see right here in the picture, this has been banned across in many countries throughout the world. Actually, the United States has not banned, but there is a lot of restriction. And what has happened is that many times in the world, wherever they have banned asbestos, all the national glove production of asbestos was actually focusing on developing countries. And right here, Colombia has just recently banned asbestos, but the problem was that every single production that was manufactured was going to developing countries because developing countries didn't have the legislative action in place to make sure that asbestos wasn't there. So I actually invite Maria Fernanda Celi, who is an amazing scientist and who explains my students what's the impact on the community of being able just to sell and to promote asbestos as countries like Colombia. And right, I'm showing right here, it's a mechanical brake shop in which we actually show how actually brake workers who actually are exposed to this asbestos fiber have been suffering and are exposed to this fiber that creates cancers, who have been linked with cancer, have been identified as a cancerous fiber. So we are showing and studying how is that the decisions that we take in the industrialized world would actually pay a toll about those who are surrounded by this type of ecosystem, this type of decisions in the developing countries. Other type of discussions that we have throughout the course are related to how are we going to displace the different ecosystems, or we are going to actually affect the biodiversity that we have in different unique ecosystems like the Galapagos Island, and how are the different inhabitants of the Galapagos Island who actually live about ecotourism and are survive connecting to ecotourism are going to survive if we actually keep taking decisions than one conductor, for example, in making sure that we limit the global average increase in temperature. And this is related, this is important because, as you know, an increase in the temperature would make that the water level would increase, and islands like Galapagos would actually be considered not usable for land living or for anything. So they have to be basically everybody who lives in this island have to be relocated. And the other topic that we actually discuss and that I think it's really important is how many times we actually develop environmental solutions for using data and using characteristics of developed countries. So for example, what I bring right here, it's an example of the type of buses that you see is circulating in developing countries. What you see in the top left is what we call chimney buses in Spanish. It's those buses that you can actually stand up and see this black tailpipe of emissions, which is not common right here. And if we were going to assess, for example, what would happen if we actually change this old bus with a new bus, most of the time, like EPA, that's the Environmental Protection Agency, would actually provide you with emission factors and data so that you can actually quantify how to do it. But when you go to developing countries, you see that the characteristics and the type of field sampling that we have to do is very different. So one of the topics that we explore is actually how do we actually need to address the environmental challenges in developing countries to make sure that we are actually reflecting the characteristics that we have in those countries and not just imposing or thinking that that's, yes, so we are not just thinking and imposing the characteristics that we have here in the United States. So overall, what we are trying to say is that the different characteristics that we formulate for countries like the United States are not going to be effective for the entire developing world. And here's just this is just, for example, of the type of infrastructure programs that we have in a capital city like Bogota. And this actually makes that, for example, providing transportation efficiency measurements had to reflect the idea that we have a different infrastructure. And if you're driving in Bogota, you have a really aggressive driving because you have to actually all the time making sure that you won't hit things like that. So there is a lot of things that you have to make sure you have to take into consideration when you actually design and solve an environmental challenge in Colombia. And I'll just go finishing the talk with saying that one of the things that I try to do throughout the course and that I invite everybody who is listening today is to make sure that you connect with people who are experts in the field, who have been studying these kind of topics. Right here at Duke, one of the things I actually do in my class is that I invite all the guests that I invite to the class are female speakers, and of course they have a Duke connection. Right here I showed like 5 of them. The first one is my advisor, who's Dalia Patiño, she has a lot of understanding of energy systems, and she actually goes and promote type of activities across Latin America, like a Duke Engage in Colombia, and she's trying to participate into making sure that the energy systems across Latin America are more reliable and more safe. The second one is Elizabeth Garza, who is a professor of the practice at the Nicolas School, and she works a lot with ecosystemic services in Mexico. So we actually invite her to speak about Oaxaca and many of the experience that she had helping in farmers and members of Mexico to integrate ecosystemic services into their income. So making sure that they actually can have an income from their role protecting forest. The third one is Christine Folch, who actually was part of the Environmental Symposium, who had an amazing experience working in Paraguay into the renegotiation of the Itaipu Dam. The fourth one is Maria Fernanda Celi, whose PhD advisor was a former Duke Master student, and she's working with asbestos in Latin America. And the fifth one is Angela Rodriguez, who was a former PhD student here at Nick School, and she was trying to explore the connection between environment and environmental justice and the peace agreement that was signed in Colombia. So she was trying to establish links between how is the political situation in a country like Colombia, who was in a civil war for a long time, will be affecting the access to environmental resources now that the peace agreement was in place. So in short, that I just want to encourage everybody to make sure that if you are interested into these topics, there is a lot of experts that we have here that have passion for that. One of the things I do in my course is not only I connect my students to the speakers, but I make sure that they are aware of the multiple opportunities that we have across Latin America. Many of my students have participated in Duke Engage, in summer programs in Paraguay. They have gone to Latin America, and there is always a lot of possibilities. So again, unfortunately, the last summer, we were going to launch the first Duke Engage in Colombia, but because of the pandemic, it had to be virtual. But there is always a lot of possibilities to go to these developing countries and make sure that what we are actually studying, what we are actually analyzing, you can actually go and see in first person what are the different protagonists and who will be you affecting, and make sure that you are actually connecting to the community that it's going to be benefited by your research. And I'll try to end with showing a little bit about how can you do something. Many times we think that how can you do something for members of developing countries. So I'll describe the final project of the course. The final project of the course with the ideas that we have been learning a lot about the environmental challenges in Latin America. I envision a way so that they can connect with a direct community. So what I did is that I contact my students with members of what we call Fundación Ayuda por Colombia. It's an NGO called like Helping Colombia. And this NGO has, it's overseeing the education of between 20 to 40 kids whose parents are either in jail or they don't have any access to to quality of education, like even public education. So the NGO provides most of the services for those kids. And what I do is that I ask the members of the NGO to ask the kids record a little conversation, a little a little magic pen, so that they record an environmental question related to environmental sustainability, to anything they want to learn about the environment, so that my students can actually solve that question. And let me show you one example of a question and of the type of things that we are doing in the course. And I don't know why this is stopping. Let me try to open my screen, try to show the video. Can you hear the audio of the screen of the video?
Sorry, could you play it again?
Can you hear the audio of the video? Yes.
We can't hear anything now. I don't know if
I know it's in pause right now, but when like 10 seconds ago, were you able to hear like the universal thing?
I think so, yeah.
Perfect. So so the idea is that they record things like this. So this is the type of videos that we receive from the kids.
Hola, me llamo Marian, tengo 10 años. El medio ambiente es la naturaleza y los humanos lo están dañando. ¿Por qué?
So in this specific example, Marian, who is a member of the foundations, wants to know why are we actually damaging the ecosystems, and if we can explain her things like that. So this is the type of questions that we receive from the kids. The kids want to know everything about sustainability. Why is that kids are dying because they don't have water to drink? Why is that I see that somebody is actually throwing garbage in the country? So the idea is that this project actually takes two things. It connects you with somebody who is actually being affected by the environmental challenges, but it also tries to encourage these kids to try to learn more about environmental challenges. And this is, I'll show just like 20 seconds of one of the things that we can actually create.
Hola Camila, no te vi ahí. Mi nombre es Henry Zapata, tengo 18 años y estudio en la Universidad de Chile. Al pensar en la mejor manera de describir el medio ambiente, pensé que una buena definición era que el medio ambiente, aunque tiene muchos significados, es toda la naturaleza.
So I just won't play the entire video, but the idea is that, for example, right here, Henry, and this is an example, he just actually enters his airplane. It's funny when he enters his airplane, and he goes through different ecosystems that we have here, and here is he entering his airplane, and he navigates through all the ecosystems that we have across the world. So he used like different type of things that we learned in the course to teach Camila about the nature, about the different ecosystems that we have. And I have multiple examples of the type of things that we do. What's the benefit of actually doing this type of things is that we actually connect with a community who is being affected. We teach them about environmental sustainability, and through that process, we encourage them to actually take part of the solution. So many of the things that we actually teach them is, hey, you need to recycle, or hey, you need to teach, you need to tell your fathers and that they need to put the garbage then. And then after this happens, then you get reactions like this. Sorry for the videos. It's hard just to play these videos because they're so low quality, but the idea, I don't know why it's not working right now, but the idea is that all the kids, they just record a video and thanking us for teaching them about sustainability, for connecting with them. And the idea is that you create an empowerment of this community. So in short, it's a candy. I'll give you a candy video. So the idea is that using the different systems, in the different resources that we have at Duke, like the Multimedia Project Studio, which I don't know why it's not working. Like the Multimedia Project Studio, we create different audiovisuals that teach a community that otherwise is disconnected. We actually engage with them and we empower them in that area. So I will end with that and the saying that there is a lot of things that you can do as a community to make sure that when you actually have okay, let's wait a little bit. When you actually want to help members of developing countries, there is a lot of ways that you can do it. There is a myriad ways that you can connect with them. Not only the course, it's of course one of the specific examples here at Duke, but there is a lot of possibility of connecting with members of developing countries. And with that being just 2:40, I will end my presentation. If anybody has a question, I'm more than happy to answer them. If Hannah can answer anything, she will be happy. But again, just to end this, I just want to encourage each of you that try to connect and try to resonate everything that you are doing with whoever is behind all these problems. Is that many times we are actually using everything that we are learning here at Duke, and it's amazing, all the subjects that we are learning, physics, chemistry, and applying those topics to solve a problem. But we forget that behind that problem, there are humans, that we need to humanize that problems, and that many, if not all the environmental challenges will have a big toll over members of the developing countries. And if you have and if you're a member of a developing country, you would actually get really benefited. You learn about how to solve the problem if you actually get access to that. As a Duke student, there is a lot of ways that you can do to help that. Yeah. So Kevin, I don't know if somebody has a question. If not, I'm more than happy to connect outside of the conference or anything like that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Why don't we give Edgar and Hannah a virtual applause or auditory?
I'm reading a question. What are the best practices and ethical considerations when documenting narrative from communities in developing countries? How do we ensure that documenting the story doesn't become extractive or exploit? That's an excellent question. So as you can see, for example, in my webpage and many of the things, I share many of the audiovisuals that I create by my students. I never shared this type of visuals from kids, and I never share them publicly, because one of the agreements that we have with the NGO is that we are trying to benefit the kids and the foundation, being respectful of the different programs that they have. So we actually assign a special agreement with them, making sure that no image of any kid was going to be distributed or was going to be used just to bring more propaganda to this type of things. But we were going to actually make sure that everything that we were doing is to benefit the kids, and making sure that we actually take any profit or any benefit from them. And one of the things that I was really interested is that the idea behind this is that the direct connection between the students and the kids was natural. That is not that we are using that for the course and then it's like, oh, we are going to promote the course as that. But making sure, that's why we record a video before and a record later, so that the students also feel that they are doing this not only as part of a course or a program or an exam, that what we are doing, but what they are doing this is for the, oh baby, what we are doing this is for the benefit of the kids, and then we actually make sure that we connect with the kids and whoever is in charge of taking care of them. Are you there? Yes, sorry. And I was playing with the keyboard and I didn't hear if I was there still. Making sure that the kids are being taken care of in the foundation, being explained about what are the type of content that we are learning, creating the course, that the content is aligned with what they are receiving, and this actually encourage them to continue in this. So the idea is not to take into consideration that this is part of an educational program at the foundation, and again, of course, making sure that we are always having not only the legal permission, but making sure that ethically we are actually making sure this to benefit the kids and not to actually making sure that we are just using this as propaganda or saying like, hey, you can use this kit or something like that. I always, I'm always, the foundation is always, of course, asking me just to promote their links so that people can get donations and financial profitability of this. But I always separate that from my courses. I don't think that it's ethical for me just in the course say like, hey, you can donate money or you can do those type of things. If the student is genuinely interested in doing that, I will leave them just to do that independently. Oh, you did it, baby! I don't know if you have any more questions. Anna is really interested in answering any questions.
I think there's another one from Leah in the chat. Would you like me to read it or you got it?
Ah, perfect. Leah, how do you recommend learning about local perspective and environmental justice issues outside of research and academic setting? That's an excellent question. And one of the things I learned about working with communities that community leaders are always one of the best ways to reach in a community and defining a community leader. It's hard to label them, but there is always leader in each of the communities who had like a really deep knowledge about the real problems for the community and the real issues that the community is facing. So I would say that the best way to engage with this type of having a broad perspective of what the locals are actually doing is going to those communities and identifying. Sometimes these community leaders have like a really formal label. So you have, for example, in Latin America, it's really called that you have like a county leader. So in the county, you don't have an elected representative, it's not a politician, it's somebody who is a member of society and who is actually voicing everything that the community wants to be expects to change. But again, I would say it's going to the communities and taking the time to go and meeting with them. They're always really interested on working with you and sharing what you want to learn. And it takes time, of course. It takes resources in terms of going there, meeting the community, making sure that you are being genuinely interested. It's not like I'll go and I'll record something and then I'll just say I play with the community. And I would say that's the short answer. But the short answer to go back again, it's complex. It's hard just to reflect what the local community wants. For example, when we did our project of solving air quality problems in Bogota, we spent 6 months going to each of the different geographical areas, like counties in Colombia, and we sat down for 8 hours with the entire community, asking them questions like, what do you feel? This is what we found technically that works. Do you think that's effective? How are we going to solve this? Is this affecting you? And let me just share, for example, a story. 90% of the people that we spoke with said that pigeons were the biggest air quality problems. That pigeons was like the most harmful crisis for them, and they were tired of pigeons because pigeons was a public health crisis. That doesn't have anything to do with air quality, but that was the problem. So we actually connected with somebody in central administration who actually can help about like how pigeons were like affecting them. But for example, another thing that we discovered is that, for example, electric taxis. In Colombia and in many members of the developing countries, electric taxis are yellow, and normal taxis are yellow. When they launched these electric taxis, the new electric taxis were blue. And after working for 1 year and operating for 1 year, the owners of the electric taxis went back to the state and said like, hey, this is not working. Nobody's riding our taxis and we need to learn why. When they did the surveys with the community, it was because the community thought that as the taxi was not blue, but was yellow but blue, it was a fake taxi. And of course, there is a lot of insecurity in these type of things. So they're like, I'm gonna get like robbed, like I'm not riding a taxi if the taxi is not yellow. So if these type of things reflect that if you don't go to the community, you don't ask what the people is going to think, many environmental solutions won't work. Something that it's really good for the environment, like having electric taxis, won't work because the perception of the community or the color of the taxi, it's different. That is something that as engineers, we don't think. It's like, it's blue, let's paint it blue to make it clean. Hey, you have to go to the community and speak with the community and say, how do you feel about riding a taxi that it's in the other color? And this just reminds us that we have to give those who are in the local community a voice. And again, that's the topic that inspired the course, Voices in the Environment. Kevin, do you have any other questions?
I'm not seeing any in the chat right now, but I guess I have a personal question.
Yes.
When you're like working with these communities, there's like a balance between like getting a fine enough like level, like where the community that you're looking at like has unique problems, right? That are very specific to that community. And then there's the other aspect where if you take like too narrow of a lens, like there's like just a logistically hard aspect about like going from small community to small community, and like your impact overall may not be as large, although like you're very like you're designing around this specific community. So like how do you like balance those two factors and decide like what level of community to look at?
That's a great question, and I think that you have to look at in cost efficiency. Many times, if you actually go and solve the not little, every problem is important, but the problems who are like a more local or like a specific scope, you need the same amount of resources that you would need to have a bigger problem. So it's actually balancing out the resources that you have. Sometimes you have to assess with the communities, how do we actually, what would happen if we actually, rather than investing in a local distributed network of water, we make sure that the entire distribution of water is solved, and the amount of resources that we can get for those same problems are comparable. So the idea is to go and identify what I say it's cost efficiency. If you actually have $10, how do you actually invest the $10? Making sure that the community gets benefit from those $10, but making sure that you also create positive synergy, that those members of the community would actually get benefits, but other members of the community will also get the members. And an essential piece of that is communication. If you actually are transparent with, hey, we have limited resources, we want to understand the problem, but we don't promise things. You don't have to go and approach the community and say like, hey, I'm going to solve all your problems, or their quality is going to be perfect. You tell them really honestly, like, I'm trying to understand a problem, what your perspective here is going to inform my decision making. I will try to actually promote public policy that in a couple years is going to be different, etc. I'm actually writing a paper, understanding, because I didn't share this in the presentation, but the idea is that we actually solve technically the air quality problem for Colombia and for Bogota, and we discover what were the policies that should be enacted to solve the air quality problem in 2011 in the next 10 years. Unfortunately, in 2018, that public policy was demoted, was taken away for political reasons. And I'm actually calculating what was the actually price for the communities for taking away that for political reasons. It was like, let's give an example. Biden now said like, hey, I'm taking away this Trump policy because the Trump policy, I don't like it, and that was a Republican policy, and my Democrat policy, it's better. But in the end, I'm trying to assess what's the price of actually making political decisions without benefiting the community. And that's a little bit of what I'm working right now. So I think that it's time for this baby to sleep a little bit, so I'll go. Thank you so much for the time. And do you know what to go to sleep? Okay, she doesn't want to go to sleep. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out, and thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. And I hope that you have a rest Duke Environmental Justice Symposium. And this is a really nice topic, and we have really nice speakers. So it was my honor to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you spending the time with us this afternoon, especially while the hard task of parenting. Doing a great job. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You as well. Bye-bye.